Let me tell you about that time I flew Spirit Airlines last month and what that experience was like, and would I do it again? Last month, I had to go to Myrtle Beach for a brief trip. It was the end of the season, so there weren't that many flights leaving from New York City that were going direct to Myrtle Beach. It was either United Airlines or Spirit Airlines. It's an hour and a half flight. I normally fly Delta or United, but I didn't want to spend a small fortune to go to Newark Airport, take the flight, go on. So I said, okay, I will try Spirit. How bad could it be? So one, it was not particularly cheap. And I knew what I was getting into. They charge for every single item. So I knew that going in. I was like, it's an overnight flight. I can do this. My challenge was I'm not a light packer. I can be a light packer. Now, had it been a knapsack and my purse, okay, fine, not a problem. I can do a laptop and a purse, my laptop bag and a purse with my belongings and my toiletries and everything in there. But I now had to somehow change my purse to a smaller purse because I'm not going to pay you $30 to $40 to carry on essentially my purse for one day. So I chose, I paid for the cheaper seat. So I think it was like $8 per seat for each way. I said I'm not going to get a big pay $50 for a big seat because it makes no sense. It's an hour and a half flight. I took the first flight out Thursday morning, and then I took the last flight out Friday evening since we had a ton of meetings and some other things in Myrtle Beach to do. Okay, fine. Got to the airport in New York. They leave out of LaGuardia, which was the old Delta shuttle terminals. So that's where both Spirit and Frontier both fly out of that terminal, Terminal A. Get there, there's a large line, but I had TSA pre, so I was able to bypass the exceedingly long line that was there. Obviously, I didn't have any bags to check, so I walked through. I always carry a water bottle with me, so not a problem. I filled that up before the airport. I also had some snacks. And again, this is an hour and a half flight. It's a 6:50 a.m. flight. I already knew I was going to sleep the majority of the flight. Now, I had thought about changing my seat. I always take an aisle seat, and I was fairly close to the front of the plane. But when I went on, it looked like the entire flight was sold out, other than like the big seats, which had now increased in price to, I want to say, $75 to $100. So you know what? I'll just stay where I'm at. Now, what they did do, so when I get on the flight, when you go to some clubs and they have this long velvet rope line where they keep people waiting for 20 minutes to make sure it seems like it's hype, it's crowded, it's going, and then you walk into the club and then it's empty and there's no one there. And it's you and like 5 other people to create that hype. That's kind of similar what Spirit did, was because I walked on a flight and there might have been 30 people total on this flight. However, if you looked at it, it was all grayed out. So I had the entire row to myself. I just moved over to the window seat and laid out, looked out the window. So it was fine. We took off on time. We landed on time. No issues. Coming back. Now, my cousins who were coming from Florida, one of them was coming from Orlando. Her seat was broken. So they had to find her another seat because her seat was broken, which was more typical of what I expected to hear when you're flying Spirit. There's always challenges. It's overcrowded. Coming home next day, that was during when New York was going through torrential floods. The LaGuardia terminal had flooded for a time, but all of that was fixed when we landed. So this is the positive that I will say. We landed and took off on time. It was fairly uneventful. Would I fly them again? No. So one, I feel like my experience was atypical because both of my flights were fairly empty. So that's one. The seats don't recline. So if you are a person who's like, yes, no one's seats recline, this is fantastic, not a problem, then this airline is for you. I don't mind some reclining, but again, this was an hour and a half flight. They sell everything. I think if they could sell you the seatbelt, they would. I'm not a fan of being nickeled and dimed. Just charge me my price. Charge me what I'm going to pay for my, my seat. Charge me for a beverage. Charge me for a snack. My purse should be included. That's a personal item. But again, that's not your model. That's fine. If you're okay with all of these things being broken down and nickeled and dimed, then Spirit is for you. I did not find it particularly cheap. Again, it was a fairly last minute thing. Some people are like, oh, you should have gone to the airport to have gotten your ticket. I live in New York City. By the time I spend money to go from my house to LaGuardia Airport, because I don't own a car, it doesn't make any sense. I would have still paid the same $200 to go to Myrtle Beach. So I spent about $200 all in. If I'd gone on United, it was double the price. They landed on time. I would not have want to take this flight for a long period. I think if you're taking for anything longer than an hour and a half, you might want to rethink getting some of the larger seats, but also understand it gets you nothing more than a larger seat with, I think, better pitch. I'm not exactly certain. But I wouldn't take this for a long flight. But as long as you're very aware of what you're looking for, I have very long legs. So fortunately, my book bag that I had that was stuffed, that was under the seat, because my flights weren't full, I didn't have my book bag that under my seat encroaching onto my leg room. So I think those are all things that you want to take into consideration. But if I was doing a checked bag, if it was a longer trip and I needed a checked bag, if I needed, wanted a bigger seat, all of those things, then I don't think so. Spirit is the cheapest option. Going with a traditional non-low cost airline, it all works into the same mix. So that is my review and thoughts on flying Spirit Airlines. It wasn't a bad flight, but I wouldn't do it again. Have an awesome day.